So let's talk about cause and effect, and I'm going to connect cause and effect, this relationship, to our fourth writing assignment, which is the persuasive argument, and I'll make that connection towards the end of this lesson. So a couple definitions. Cause is why something is happening, and effect is what is actually happening. So we see the effects on the surface. Effects are things that we deal with every day. What I'm going to challenge us to do in this lesson is find out why something is happening, and that is the cause. So if you're visual, here's a pretty simple representation. There's a cause and an effect, and the cause creates the effect. So here's an example. I was pulled over on my way to work, and as a result, I was 15 minutes late to class. Take a second. What is the cause and what is the effect in this sentence? Go ahead, pause the video, take a second. There's a one-to-one relationship here. So being pulled over was the cause, and what did it cause? Me being late to class. If you were in my class that day, you would have seen me show up late to class. That's the effect. That's something you had to deal with. Note the grayed out words, and as a result, those indicate that a cause and effect relationship is coming. So again, pulled over, late to class, pretty straightforward. Sometimes it gets a little more complicated though, so here's an expansion on that example. I was pulled over on my way to work, and as a result, I was 50 minutes late to class, as well as given a $250 ticket. Take a second, pause the video. Again, what is the cause and what is the effect in this sentence? We have one cause and two effects. Not only was I late, but I got a pretty big ticket, right? Both of these effects came from the same cause. So we can have one cause and multiple effects. Now think about that. That's pretty common sense. Something happens and it creates multiple effects. Let's find some effects. So I'm going to run through a couple examples here, and I want you to pause the video after I show you the cause and think about what some possible effects are. So here's one. You got a visa in the mail, and it was pre-approved for $5,000 limit. What are some effects? The moment you swipe that card, the moment you activate it, the moment you swipe that card and purchase something, you are automatically in debt, which means you will have a monthly payment. That is one effect. Another effect is you can get the new laptop that you need for work or for school. Right? So two effects, one cause. Here's another one. You got a promotion at your job. What are some effects? Pause the video. Think about some effects. Hopefully, if you got promoted, you got an increase in pay. Promotions without an increase in pay are the worst. But if you got promoted and you got an increase in pay, you probably have more stuff to do. So you probably had an increase in your responsibilities. Again, one cause, promotion, and two effects. Increase in pay and a lot more to do. Sometimes this relationship gets a little more complicated, and this is where cause and effect is going to connect to your persuasive argument writing assignment. I want you to always ask the question why. Anytime something is happening, ask the question why, and it will help you work backwards and find what's at the heart of the issue and find the real cause, which is going to be more or less what you want to argue in your persuasive assignment. So here we have a number of effects, and yes, we can link it back to one cause, but if we keep asking the question why, you can trace it back to a deeper cause, a larger cause. So here's a visual analysis of this, a cutaway of the earth. The effects are what's on the surface, the water, the land, the trees, the humans, the animals. That's what we deal with every day. If you go a little deeper, you will find the cause. So my challenge to you is find the core of the issue. And that core of the issue is going to be the problem that you want to solve in this fourth writing assignment. Sometimes there are multiple causes, right? We talked about multiple effects. Sometimes there are multiple causes. So here's that example again. I was pulled over, which caused me to be late to class and get the ticket. Now ask yourself why. Why was I pulled over? Well, a lot of people will say, well, you were speeding. Yes, I was speeding. Ask yourself why. Why was he speeding? Perhaps the night before, my gas tank was low and I didn't fill the tank up, and I left it till the morning the next day, which caused me to be a little late, which caused me to pick up the speed on the way to work and get the ticket and be late to class after being pulled over. All right, so we can work backwards off of this. Here's another example. 3 years ago, there was a tsunami in Japan, and it caused a lot of effects. And you can search these videos on YouTube. You can see the effects. They're all over the place. Thousands of people were displaced, were killed, were missing, and are still missing. There was a nuclear meltdown or a near nuclear meltdown. What caused all this? A lot of people say, well, the tsunami, right? But tsunamis don't just occur. The ocean doesn't just say, I'm going to go wash a town away, right? Something had to happen to create that tsunami. And we all know that a tsunami is caused by an earthquake underwater. That caused the tsunami, which caused all of these effects. So sometimes it gets a little more complicated. And what I want you to think about at this point, I'll give you a sneak peek on your fourth writing assignment, which is the persuasive argument. I want you to think about, how does cause and effect, how does that relationship relate to argument? Always ask yourself why. So in your fourth writing assignment, I'm going to ask you to identify a problem in one of your communities. We've already talked about communities. I want you to identify a problem in one of those communities. That's something you're dealing with, something that you want solved, something that you want changed. That problem is most likely an effect. You're feeling that problem as an effect. What I want you to start thinking about is, what is causing that effect? And if you work backwards, always ask yourself why. If you work backwards, you'll be able to get perhaps a little closer to the heart of the problem. And what it may reveal to you is your audience for your fourth writing assignment. So in other words, your audience is the person or group of people that has the most control over the situation. So I'll give you one example. A few years ago, one of my students, she lives in an apartment complex, and outside there isn't adequate lighting. And she was concerned for her safety. So the problem was inadequate lighting outside of the apartment complex. She worked backwards off of that, and we determined that why is there not inadequate lighting? Because there are no lights there. Why aren't there any lights there? Because no one put them up. Who would put them up? And we eventually were able to boil it down to the owner of the building, or the landlord, as the audience. And the core of the issue was lack of safety precautions for residents in the apartment building. So by working backwards, using cause and effect, this student was able to identify who she can then argue to and what her argument was going to be. So she ended up writing an argument to her landlord, and her argument was, install safety lighting outside of the building for your residents. And she came up with a number of reasons and a number of pieces of evidence to make that argument. So at this point, I want you to think about one community that you reside in and one problem that you are facing in that community. Start asking yourself why. What's the real problem here? And who has the most control over the solution? Who can solve it? And that'll get you set up for making an argument, which we'll deal with in the next lesson. And I will discuss the fourth writing assignment in more detail in a future lesson as well.